Pros and cons, and everything you need to know about owning an old home in Houston, Texas. My name's Mariam Hejazi. I've been helping people buy and sell residential real estate for over 12 years, and I have been loving Houston since 1987. Let's get into it and stick around to the end of the video. I'm going to tell you everything that I love about my 70-year-old house. So let's first of all talk age. What is old in Houston? So historically, Houston is not a super old city like Boston or New York, but we do have our history, all right? It's just not as long as the Eastern Seaboard, all right? So old in Houston would be anything like very old, would be in the 1800s. Old houses that I'm really going to be referencing for the purposes of this video are going to be anything built before, we're going to say 1999. Let's say 2000. So if a house was built in 2000 here in Houston, it would be 25 years old today. I know that's not a super old house, but in Houston, there is so much new construction that a 25-year-old house is considered old. So let's get into the bad first and let's go through all of the cons. All right, so problem one with buying an older property more than 25 years old. System updates. So we have the major systems of a home. We have HVAC, roof, electric, plumbing, slab, and stucco if applicable. You may have stucco in a house in the 90s. On an old home with stucco is really going to be pre-1940. There are very few very old stucco homes. The stucco you find on houses here in Houston are really going to be built after 2005. And stucco will be a completely different video. It is a very complex thing to navigate. So if these systems have not been updated, you may be footing the bill. So HVAC, these are just ballparks. I'm just going to ballpark the estimates here and just keep in mind that I am a realtor and I have been doing this a long time, but I am not an HVAC professional. I'm not a roofing expert. I'm not a master electrician. These are just ballpark estimates. And if you want to verify, you really need to have the inspection report in front of you, and you need to call a licensed professional to give you an actual quote. All right. So HVAC, if the whole thing needs to be redone, you could be looking at whole thing, just the system, not the ducts. Um, you could be looking at anywhere from 8,000 to 17,000. It just depends on the size of the home, how many units, and if the wiring needs to be done. A roof could be as easy as $9,000 or as ridiculous as 20,000. It depends on the roofing material, the pitch of the roof, and the square footage. For example, I have a very, very low pitch on my roof, and I have shingles on my roof. I actually should not have shingles. I should have a tar and gravel roof. A shingle roof on my home would cost me about $12,000. A tar and gravel is going to be in excess of 17,000. So we really have to look at the roofing product on the cost. So again, talk to a roofing professional. Plumbing, I mean, if you need under slab plumbing, it could be as light of a bill as $3,000, or it could be in excess of $40,000. It depends on what kind of slab you have. Do you have a crawl space, or do you have a slab foundation, or do you have a pier and beam foundation, and how much excavation needs to be done, how much piping material needs to be installed? Slab, you know, foundation is scary, and I'm going to give you that. Foundation is very scary. But if the problem has been fixed and it's been maintained and it's under warranty with the foundation company that has a long, reputable history here in Houston, like Jericho, then it's been fixed and you don't have to super duper worry about it. But your slab could be expensive or could not. It could need piers. They have fancy things now. You could do polyurethane injections if applicable. I had a garage leveled recently and it was only $3,000 to fix a 2.4-inch differential. They used polyurethane injections and it was $3,000. Not that bad. Great fix. It was a 6-hour process. Um, these are the major systems. So if any of these have not been updated, it may be on your dime. Now, if the house is 50 years old, or if the house is, let's say, even 35 years old, it is highly likely that all of these systems will have either been maintained or updated. By the time a house hits year 35 of life, it's definitely had a roof. There's almost no way a roof in Texas would last over 29 years, although I have seen 22 and 27-year-old roofs function perfectly fine. Uh, it's highly likely that you're going to have recent or new HVAC units if you're looking at a 35-year-old plus house. And then same thing with the electric. Some people have updated their electric, some people have not. And a very good and very experienced electrician one time told me this because I have a complex about electrical problems, and a Federal Pacific board is something that always will need to be replaced. So if I have buyers under contract, if there's a Federal Pacific panel board, I know that I need to tell my clients to expect to have that entire panel board replaced with something new and up to date. It's usually a General Electric. I had a seasoned master electrician tell me one time after I pointed out the Federal Pacific Board, he said, "You know what? I see your Federal Pacific Board that you're pointing out. However, I would like to point out that since it was installed in whatever year, let's say it was 1971, since 1971, this FPE board is still functioning as intended." And so there is that. Some of these older houses, they're still function every component or something that may be called out on an inspection report, it's still functioning as intended unless it's broken. So something to really keep in mind are the major systems: HVAC, roof, electric, plumbing, slab, and stucco if applicable. All right, number 2, historic district. Is this said old house that you have your eye on in a historic district? If it is, are you wanting to do any significant changes to the exterior of the house? Even paint? Are you trying to do an addition? Do you need to add square footage? Do you see a garage addition in your future? Are you downsizing because all of your birdies have left the nest? Or are you planning on starting a family? Are you going to need a mother-in-law suite? Are you going to need the opportunity to expand this old property, your property that you are acquiring? If it's yes to any of these questions, and you are buying a property that is in one of the 22 historic districts in Houston, you need to know that you are going to have to get approval from the Houston Archaeological and Historic Commission. All right, so your architect is going to have to submit the plans and they are going to have to say okay. And sometimes they don't say okay. And sometimes you have to go to these hearings and you have to speak your case. And sometimes your neighbors will speak out against you at these hearings. So if you are looking in any of the historic districts, just know that it could be really tough in the future if you're wanting to make any large changes. All right, endless maintenance. Number 3. Endless, you're owning an old house, like an old body. 88-year-old people have to go to the doctor more often than a 25-year-old person. It's just part of it. You're gonna have to all pretty much do a project a year, probably. You're going to get some pros. I'll go over the pros in a little bit. But you're gonna have to decide, like, Are you handy? Are you okay with having a favorite electrician on speed dial and a plumber and a great handyman that is always on call for you? Are you okay with replacing some things? Are you okay with saying yes to some projects? It's very important that you get a very good inspection during your option period so you know what is coming. Phantom issues. So this is something like, every time it gets below X degrees, XYZ happens. Or sometimes it makes this sound and sometimes it doesn't. Or it did this and now it doesn't. These are just pains of old houses, and you could get an old house that is like perfect and never gives you any problems, or you get a lemon. You never know. This is why it's important to inspect before you buy. If you own an older bungalow in the Heights and it's an all wooden structure on pier and beam, you might have humidity issues. You might have to install a humidifier system and have a humidity meter inside of your house, and it'll just be another thing on your list of like check on your checks. It might be an issue, it might not. Exaggerated expansion and contraction with the weather. I live in a house that's on a slab, and when it's really cold or really hot, I do see settling cracks in my walls on the interior and on the exterior. My house has had previous foundation work. Other previous owners have done it. And it just comes with the territory of an old house, especially if this said house is on a slab foundation in Houston. Houston is like a built-up swamp. We have a fault line on the west side of town. If you're on the west side of town, it is notorious for significant foundation issues. I have seen foundation issues as heinous as you walk in and there's only the slab below, there's no flooring because the slab is like, and I could see like dirt in between it. It was insane. Of course, my buyers and I just walked straight out of that house and never ever considered it after that. But most foundation issues are fixable. Um, this is just, again, territory with old houses. Wooden structures expand and contract with cold and hot, and the humidity and the dryness. And Houston does have a lot of really crazy weather. And sometimes it'll be 100 degrees, and then we'll have a cool front and it'll go down to like 88 degrees, or the inverse, or in the fall and the spring when we have this like push and pull of different seasons blowing in the wintertime, I mean, it could be 32 degrees, and then the next week it could easily shoot up to like 59 degrees or 63 degrees. And if you think I'm exaggerating, just Google like crazy weather in Houston. Insane finishes. I mean, I have walked into older homes, and from the front door, I've been able to count 7 different flooring types, which is a huge pet peeve of mine. I hate it when it's not cohesive throughout. I mean, sometimes there's like 8 different paint colors. Sometimes there's hideous tile that was put down in the 80s, or perhaps there's original shag carpeting or shag carpeting that was put in 1973 in a beautiful 55 mid-century modern house. Or maybe they glued the carpet directly onto the beautiful original floors, and you have to bring a wood restoration company to come in and like clean off this crazy glue. I mean, if you buy an older home, chances are it's had 6 or 10 owners before you that did all kinds of crazy things. So be prepared for like crazy tile, wallpaper, carpet, flooring, textured walls and ceilings. I mean, properties from the 70s have popcorn ceilings. I've even seen popcorn ceilings with gold glitter in it. It's awful, and you have to deal with it. But if the goal is to own an older home for various different reasons, you just have to deal with it. It just comes with the territory. And lastly, things are usually not under warranty unless there's like a brand new refrigerator that comes with a 1 year warranty, or the slab is still under warranty after piers were put in last year. Just make sure that these warranties are transferred at any change in ownership, because if you don't transfer warranties at change of ownership, it usually voids the warranties. So, like an old or a newer home, like if you bought a brand new construction home, it's usually going to have a bumper to bumper warranty in your first 365 days of ownership. So you can get an inspection in month 11 of your ownership and then call the construction manager and say, hey, here are all the things that have settled or are wrong with the house. 11 months later, please fix them. And in a new construction house, that's a reality. But if you're buying a 75-year-old house, that is not going to happen. There is nothing under warranty. And sometimes older houses are more to insure because of more problems. That's just how it is. And if you love old houses, a new house will never be the house for you, and vice versa. If you love new houses, stop watching this video because an old house will just never meet the mark for you. Old houses are really like a labor of love. It's a niche. It's like somebody that prefers going to the antique store if they need a new dish set rather than IKEA or Crate and Barrel. Okay, so let's go to the cons and all of the fun things about owning a home. So, pro, number one, most old houses are really unique. They're unique, and that's why people love them. They're extremely well built. They are built in a time when we had true craftsmanship in America, especially if you get something built before 1970. The level of craftsmanship is unparalleled, and you have a higher quality of materials. Example, lumber. So the lumber that is in an older house came from an older tree. The lumber that goes into a newer house came from a newer tree. And why this is important is because if you know anything about plants, a younger tree or a tree that came from a farm that grew very fast is going to have much larger growth rings. So it's going to grow a lot more each season than like an old growth tree. And an old growth tree, the growth rings are going to be much tighter together, and it makes for a much denser wood product. Older houses are usually going to be made from lumber that was harvested from old growth trees. If you are a forest person, I'm sorry, we cannot go back in time and change it, but I will say older trees do make for better lumber, and it's just in these older houses, and it actually makes for a much more sound structure. Because with larger growth rings, it's not as hard and it's not as sturdy as a tighter growth ring. I mean, if you look at a 2x4 from 1957 versus 2001, you will be amazed. Even 2x4s today that are sold in Home Depot and Lowe's, they are not the actual dimensions of 2x4s. Same with like 4x4s and the headers that go in the big support beams in the rafters. So I really appreciate much higher quality materials being used in these older houses. You have thicker glass in the older windows. I mean, you have sometimes you have a higher level of attention to design, especially historic houses and like the heights. Sometimes there's just all these fun design elements that you just don't get with new builds. Older homes sometimes come on much larger lots. So, for example, Braeswood Place, Old Braeswood, Westbury, Willow Bend, Meyerland, Maplewood, your average lot size is going to be over 9,000 square feet. These these subdivisions were all developed between about 1950 and like 1967, and there was just more land to be had at that time. Now, if we go from Braeswood and Braes Bayou up to the Heights, keep in mind that the Heights was developed pre-World War II for the most part. And remember what was happening in the United States pre-World War II, where we were in the throes of the Great Depression, and the lots are just much smaller in the Heights. Your average lot size in the Heights is about, for the most part, 5,000 square feet, unless it was a special lot or combined in some way over the years. And just to note, the Heights is called the Heights because it is the highest point in Houston. Also, we had a convergence of building styles. So pre-World War II in Houston, you largely see pier and beam structures. So if you're buying a house that is pier and beam, it was likely built before World War II. And if your house is on a concrete slab, it was highly likely built post World War II. And that is due large in part, and I learned this a couple years ago, and it was surprising to me that pier and beam houses were actually more expensive to build and took a much higher level of craftsmanship. And when the soldiers came home after World War II, we needed a ton of housing very fast. And so that was actually the expansion of garden oaks and oak forests. That's a ton of post-World War housing, mostly all on slabs. But apparently a slab foundation is much easier and cheaper to install than a pier and beam. The more you know. All right, so the next is usually, all right, so we usually have larger lots, and the house is usually larger square footage. Now, if you're buying an old house built in the 20s or 30s or the 1910s here in Houston, you're likely working with less than 1,200 square feet. That is just how they are, unless you are buying a very rich person's house from 1920 or 1912. The only big houses built in that time window here in Houston were by wealthy families, and it's highly likely that your large old house is in a historic district. Most of the older houses built post World War II are going to have more square footage than the brand new construction here in the Loop. Now, if you go on the outskirts of town, so I would say anything outside of the 1960 line, which is outside Beltway 8, but still a little bit inside of 99, or especially if you go out to Lake Conroe or the Woodlands, you are going to be able to get a gigantic house. This video is really centered around historic houses, more inside of the Loop, or like in Memorial or in Westbury or Meyerland. You can get a huge house on a huge lot on the outskirts of town, but if you are looking inside of town, this is kind of the lay of the land for the old houses. So if you are looking inside of the Loop and you want more square footage, then you're going to need to go slightly older, and I would steer away from new construction if square footage and lot size is really important to you. Sometimes, which I've already touched on this, you get a pier and beam house if you buy an old house. Some people swear by pier and beam, and they believe that it's actually easier on the body and it creates less stress as you walk around your house as compared with a cement slab. And if you think I'm joshing you, you should Google it. Another pro is that this old house you're considering is already settled. It's already done all the settling it's going to do, and so there shouldn't be any more crazy surprises. Materials have already off-gassed, and this is something relatively new that we're dealing with. In some instances, and of course, not all instances, but in some instances, some people report becoming sick after they've moved into their brand new house. And this is due to a myriad of factors. And of course, you need to independently verify your specific case. But sometimes the new construction quality of craftsmanship, as already referenced, is just not there. And sometimes they move into an old house or a new house with mold. and it causes health problems. Or sometimes these brand new products, they're new, they're new products with new technology, new molecules, a new fabrication process, and it off gases materials. And again, if you think that I am making this up, you should do your own search about off gassing in brand new construction houses. I think it's not super well understood, but it happens enough to where I have been able to have conversations with people and verify this when they were living in a new house. I have a good friend who swears their new house made them sick for all the years that they lived there. And as soon as they moved to a not brand new construction house, they immediately got better. So, was that a new house? Sickness? Was it not? I'm not sure. I can't verify it, but I do know that she's not the only person that has ever told me that. So, you also can get much more bang for your buck. So you might be able to get a much larger house on a much larger lot for way less than the price of new construction here in the center of Houston. Now, this doesn't always count on the outskirts of Houston. Now, are you going to need to do some work? Probably. It just depends on, is the price worth it to you, the money price and the sweat equity price. So it just depends on your budget and your appetite for work and if you have a grand vision. And another secret pro is sometimes in these older houses, people have already put in pools. There are neighborhoods in Houston that a lot of the older houses already have pools. So wouldn't it be nice if you already had a pool at your new house and you didn't have to live through pool construction? And then sometimes they come with like fancy bells and whistles. Sometimes they come with generators, or sometimes they're already wired for a generator or a hot tub, or somebody has already put in the outdoor kitchen. And you may not love the way the outdoor kitchen is done, but it would certainly be less effort for you to revise the outdoor kitchen rather than for you to completely write the story, if you catch my drift. So I just appreciate in these older houses that people have kind of already thought of improvements. Like it would be nice if your house already had a storage shed when you moved in, or it would be really nice if your house already had 10 mature, beautiful, large, old oak trees where you could put a swing. I mean, the little things like that are really nice. And mature trees do add value to the house. Unless you hate nature, then don't move to an old neighborhood because there will be old trees. All right. And when you move to your old house, please don't cut all your trees down or please don't knock it down. That's a problem in Houston is there's such a tear down culture. People love to just like scrape it off the earth and start anew. And sometimes there's something you can do about it and sometimes they're not. If the house is not in a historic district, there's not a lot that can be done about it. So this covers most of the pros and cons. And of course, there are probably minute things that I did not cover that I can add to the comments later as I think about it. I hope that this was helpful for you. And as promised, let me tell you about all of the things that I love about my 70-year-old house. So, number one, my house doesn't look like anybody else's house. My house, I've only seen my house built on one other lot in my entire corner of town, which I really appreciate because I definitely march to the beat of my own drum. And I really appreciate that I don't live in a house that is cookie cutter. It feels like history. It feels like home here. It just, in my opinion, and I'm a lifelong antiques enthusiast, so take it with a grain of salt if you're not. But I love an old house because it feels more homey than something brand new. And everyone has their own preference. And of course, if you've made it this long in the video, chances are you do appreciate an old house and a really great antique store. My house has stood the test of time. My house was built in 1956 and it has withstood every storm every tropical storm, every tornado, not that there's a ton of tornadoes here in Houston, but it has withstood every major weather event in Houston since 1956. And it's still here today, and it gives me such a deep sigh of relief to know that my old house has stood the test of time. And I went through this house by myself in Beryl, and Beryl came through in 2024. And while Hurricane Beryl did not drop a ton of water on Houston, what it did give us was insane high winds. And it took down many, 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 many thousands of old, beautiful historic trees here in Houston. And it was scary. It was really scary to look at the radar and look at my crazy cool mid-century modern windows and all of my old trees around my house. It was really scary to go through this hurricane by myself. But I said to myself, you know what? Your house was built in 1956 and it's still here and it's never flooded and it's still here and you are going to be just fine. And I really appreciated that. And I don't know if it's just me, but it's just my personal viewpoint on my old house. I also love that as a 1956 construction home, my house is actually pre-Astrodome. The Houston Astrodome put Houston on the worldwide map. And if you know anything about Astrodome history, you'll know that the dome was completed in 1963. So my house had been through several years of life before the Astrodome had even gone under construction. I also really love my wood floors that creak when you walk on them. And of course, like not every board in my house creaks when you walk, but I really like that. It's a comfort thing for me. I grew up in a 1958 ranch style home. And so that's probably why I love old houses anyway, but I love my old original floors and mine are extra pretty because they are quarter sawn, which means that my boards were just cut a different way. And actually, quarter sawn does not yield the highest amount of boards per log. So, just a fun fact for you. So, if you want to call BS on anything that I said today, you are free to fact check and Google me, and I welcome your rebuttal and comments below. I would be happy and honored to respond. And if you found this video because you are doing research ahead of a big move to Houston, I would be honored at a chance to earn your business and to help you figure out where you belong in Houston. And if you found this video because you are looking at old houses in Houston, I just happen to specialize in houses built before 1970. And as previously mentioned, I talk the talk and I walk the walk, and I also do live in a very old house, and I got to fix the pipes and fix the foundation and deal with my old roof and deal with my old water heater and deal with my old trees. But I still love my old house and I would not have it any other way. My name is Mariam Hejazi. I've been helping people buy and sell residential real estate for over 12 years, and I have been loving Houston since 1987. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.